Now we are going to talk about the interpretation of soil test results. We have sampled from a field where we have set it up into management zones, and we have a soil sample from this spot. So there's several columns that we have to look at in more depth once we get the analysis back. There are many columns that have a lot of good information, but in order to do a nitrogen recommendation, we will focus on three of these columns. The first is the depth of what we are going to sample, or what we have sampled, and you can see on your left that we have 4 depths in this study. So we have 0 to 8, 8 to 24, 24, 36, and 36 to 48. So we've gone down 48 inches. For the University of Nebraska recommendation, we need to know what the organic matter is only of the surface sample, because that's the area where that organic matter will break down fairly quickly through the season and release some nitrogen, so we take that into account. The most important information, though, is in the column where it says nitrate nitrogen parts per million. And again, we can zoom in on that. And in this particular study, there wasn't a lot of difference between the depths. The parts per million just range from 5 to 8. A lot of times this top number might be 15 or 10, and it might be less below. But there's no consistency there. That's why we take the samples, because we want to find out what it is. Now, the University of Nebraska uses the part per million in their recommendation procedure. There's also a column in some of the different labs. They tell you how much actual nitrogen that is. We do a little bit of number crunching on this. We don't use these numbers directly. And now I'll show you how we use these numbers in our corn calculator spreadsheet. To find the University of Nebraska calculator, the easiest way to do it is to go into your browser and type in soilfertility.unl.edu. Once you type that in, it'll bring you to the correct soil management to optimize crop production site. And then with that, you'll need to scroll down under the soil management software and find the corn nitrogen recommendation calculator. And once you find that, you click on that, and you will need to save the target to your hard drive or whatever, so you could use the calculator. So first you download it, then once it's downloaded, you click on it and it'll come up. There are several sections. We've put on the screen the first section where you describe your application system, and you can have 3 different systems. We have several columns. The enter end management column, you can enter any name you want here. I have split because this is for an application where we put some on in the pre-plant and then through side dress and fertigation. But you can also have a pre-plant where most of it is put on at planting or before, and then you can have a fall. But you can change these to anything you want. You can also pick which kind of fertilizer you're going to use, anhydrous ammonia. There's several choices. For the purpose of what we're doing today, this isn't all that important, but there is an economic component. You can add the current price for the fertilizer, whether it's anhydrous, and you can enter the cost of applying it. So this is going to give you your total nitrogen costs. It'll calculate it on how much it is per pound of N. When we have that filled out, we will move down the spreadsheet into the specific field-specific information set of columns. You can number them on top, or you could call them whatever you want. We just have an example here. You put in your yield goal. You decide whether you have fine textured soil or sandy soil. That changes the recommendation a little bit. Our soils up at the Haskell Ag Lab are fine textured. You put in the organic matter. It may be high or low. It tells you it's important to get that correct. and then how deep you've soil sampled. We sampled 48 inches. This spreadsheet only allows you to put in 3 layers, so we're going to average those bottom 2 layers together. You put in the number of inches each sample. We went 0 to 8, 8 to 24, and then we're going to combine the 24 to 48. Our soil samples had 7 parts per million in the surface, 8 right below it, and then an average of 5 and 6. So we've put them in there. If your soil test does not give you the part per million, you can change to pounds per acre. You would have to read off your sheet what pounds per acre these were, so you could go either way. So you make sure you have the right units. We also change our recommendation based on the previous crop, so you can select whichever one you had. Mostly that would be corn or soybeans. If you're irrigated, you can put the amount of irrigation water and if there's nitrates in there. If you don't have any, irrigation water, you can just put zeros there or leave it blank. And there's an option if you have manure. You can create several scenarios by just choosing which one of those application strategies you want to use. For the economic component, you have to put in how much you think you're going to get in terms of the value of the corn. If you're doing this mid-season and you've already applied nitrogen, you can put that in. So if you'd already put 50 pounds out in the fall, or you maybe put 30 pounds out with your herbicide, you add that there, and then the recommendation will not include that. So there's several outputs from this spreadsheet. It splits out the various end credits, and it also tells you need here 299 total pounds of N to produce 220 bushels, but then it subtracts off credit. So we had a 92-pound credit for that high organic matter, and then for the N in the soil, we're crediting 53 pounds. Since it's continuous corn, there's no credit there, and we zeroed out the irrigation. And so the final recommendation with everything is 123 pounds. We looked at the price of nitrogen, we looked at how the price of corn and nitrogen are related, and we get what's called an adjusted nitrogen recommendation based on how we put out the N and the economics. And you can see when nitrogen is fairly cheap, we can actually apply a little bit more nitrogen profitably. And then there's a summary of how much the fertilizer costs per acre and how much the application cost, and then the total with the cost and application. This was a split application, so there were several applications there. Now this is done for a specific location or in a grid sampling, a zone. And so you would have several recommendations maybe for an entire field. Once you have your recommendation for each of your soil samples and you want to apply it with variable rate or some method like that, you would create a map, which the software would end up producing a map like you have here, where you would get one application rate for this part of the field and then another over here. Depending on your equipment, you might be only be able to do it in blocks and not be able to change it on the go. So you have to use your judgment about how to do that application. But certainly if you have a lot of contrasting recommendations going from very small numbers to high numbers, somehow you're going to want to be able to apply the fertilizer rationally so you get a match between your recommendations and your application.